If you like what I do, consider joining my channel or donating to my coffee. Links in the description. Finally, an Ender Lily's Quietus of the Night's fanboys' take on Ender Magnolia Bloom in the Mist. What could somebody who asserts that Ender Lilies is the greatest Metroidvania think about the latest game in the franchise? I'm sure you're all on pins and needles, waiting to hear someone with extreme biases' thoughts on the successor of one of his favorite games of all time. How could the Metroidvania guru, the stalwart champion and staunch herald of Ender Lilies, possibly feel about the one game he's been excitedly anticipating for over a year? What illuminating suppositions could... It's great. The game's great. I loved Ender Magnolia a lot. It's big, more ambitious, and improves on its predecessor in many respects. Oh my god, will you look at that big, beautiful map? But let's stop messing around. What's Ender Magnolia about? You play as Lilac, a little amnesiac who awakens in some kind of technological housing unit, so the similarities are definitely there. Unlike Lily, Lilac doesn't have a deathless pact and must find her protector spirit, or homunculus. Once a deal is struck with Nola, Lilac and her new homunculus friend must work together to unravel the mystery that is their memory loss, as well as figure out what's happening in the lands of fumes. Intrigue and objective set, I was ready to dive into the next game in the Ender franchise. Could Ender Magnolia be 2025's first big Metroidvania blockbuster?
Combat.
If you enjoyed the combat in Ender Lilies, you're going to feel right at home with Ender Magnolia. And if you didn't, I'd say Magnolia's improvements are enough to win over the haters. The game brings a slew of changes that refine the experience while keeping its core essence intact. Let's start with the biggest change. No more use limits on your attacks. Instead, cooldowns manage your abilities, letting you spam your favorite homunculi without worrying about running out. It's a small change, but one that makes combat feel much more fluid and forgiving. And I regret to inform you, but the belly flop is gone. In its place is a more tactical role, which is then quickly replaced by a glide within the first 20 minutes. Magnolia doesn't waste any time getting you set up with familiar movement options like double jump and glide early on. Most likely a nod to feedback from Ender Lilies, though I'll always have a soft spot for the belly flop. Combat loadouts have also seen a shakeup. Magnolia allows you to equip 4 attacks instead of 3, but it loses the dual loadout system from Lily's. While the added attack slot is nice, the absence of 2 loadouts feels limiting, especially when crafting specialized builds for different situations. It would have been nice to have had my regular loadout that I could switch to an anti-air loadout. Still, the new approach to homunculi makes up for it. Magnolia embraces a less is more philosophy, reducing the spirit count from 26 in Lilies to just 10 homunculi. This might sound like a downgrade, but each homunculus comes with 3 unique attacks, giving players 30 abilities to experiment with. The caveat is you can only equip 1 attack per homunculus. I guess that makes sense, because summoning 3 Nolas at once would have been hilariously broken. Magnolia introduces status ailments, a first for the series, and they add an extra layer of strategy to combat. My favorite? The freeze effect. There's nothing quite like encasing an enemy, bosses included, in ice, stopping them dead in their tracks and leaving them wide open for a critical hit. It's deeply satisfying and a game changer in tough fights. Speaking of tough fights, let's talk enemies. First off, those rats. They're such little shits that the devs promised to nerf them in the very first patch. And it's easy to see why. Without iframes after taking damage, even a small swarm can take you out in seconds. Couple this with the fact that every enemy can rip away 25 to 50% of your health per hit, and you've got yourself a dangerous world to navigate. What makes enemy damage output especially harsh in Magnolia is that Lilac actually gets gear this time around. And despite always being up to date on my gear, I was still getting bodied in just a few hits. I can only imagine how ridiculous things would have gotten had I not been in vogue with the latest fashions. So yeah, enemies are still very much a threat in Ender Magnolia, and you'll love to see it. Though I think some balancing is in order. The difficulty and enemy damage rubber bands wildly between biomes. I personally didn't mind it because it kept me on my toes and there's no punishment to death, but I just wanted to make you all aware that the game's difficulty bounces all over the place. And, unfortunately, it's never easy because enemies hit just so goddamn hard. Good luck against the Silent Hill nurses. Lilac can defend herself with her glide, dodge, and parry, but I'll dive deeper into the parry in the progression section. Just know the parry is just like you'd imagine. Press the button at just the right time to stop incoming damage. I hardly used the parry in Ender Lilies, but Magnolia, it's a necessity. Thankfully, I found Magnolia's parry window to be pretty generous, which is a good thing because some bosses you just couldn't take down without knowing how to parry. As for the bosses in Ender Magnolia, yeah, we got ourselves a steep challenge here, boys. I remember Ender Lily's bosses being pretty tough when I first fought them. Guardian Silva was the first boss fight with some real bite, with all of the Mad Knight and Knight Captain Julius being the game's real blockers. But I feel like Ender Magnolia's bosses were a lot tougher. The first few bosses are pretty easy, almost too easy, but boy, do things ramp up as we progress. There were a few bosses who were absolute walls and took me several attempts to get through. I enjoyed all of them and can't really think of one I thought was too cheap or too cheesy, though there were people in my Discord who did not like the witch boss. I took her down in one go, so either I got lucky or they all suck. Get good, nerds. If you've played Ender Lilies, then you'll be familiar with Magnolia's boss dynamics. These fights have a rhythm and are essentially a ballet, a very dangerous ballet. The boss will attack, then wait a second until it attacks again. Some bosses switch things up, certainly, but mainly you'll be dodging an attack, punishing, and then dodging the next attack to punish again. This works because these lulls between attacks give you ample time to heal yourself. So it's not uncommon to get clobbered by something and then just stand next to it and heal yourself. It looks silly, but it's effective. And if you get attacked while healing, Lilac can just dodge out of the healing animation. I don't know too many games that let you do that, so I really appreciated it. And if a boss is really messing you up, you got options. You can explore and find more stuff, you can grind levels and get stronger, which I do not recommend, or you can switch up your style completely. Magnolia gives you plenty of choices for customization. You can mix up your homunculi and try new attacks, you can try out new relics to modify Lilac to be better suited for the situation, or you can mess around with gear to improve your stats. Sometimes it's fun to experiment until you find something to take out a particularly difficult boss. And in this respect, Ender Magnolia is leaps and bounds ahead of what Ender Lilies had to offer. That's it for this section. Ender Magnolia retains the rhythmic, dance-like combat of its predecessor while layering on a bunch of meaningful improvements. With streamlined mechanics, deeper strategy, and some truly memorable encounters, Magnolia's combat is a triumph, even if you still have to deal with those damn rats. And if things are a little too intense for you, there are plenty of accessibility options to make the game manageable for players of all skill levels.
Abilities, platforming.
Ender Magnolia, much like its predecessor, plays abilities very safe. Most of the early game abilities Lilac gets are things we've seen, not just in other MVs, but in the previous game in the franchise. Double jump, air dash, ground pound, wall jump, dash. Pretty standard stuff. Lilac gets a grappling hook just like Lily, but it's more like a zip line in this game that holds you in place instead of slingshotting you. I prefer Lily's grappling hook because it was fun and felt more like a movement option than just an environmental interaction, though it was just an environmental interaction. It was just better at hiding it. There are a few late game abilities that are a little more unique or at least uncommon, but I don't want to spoil those here. I will say Ender Magnolia gives you ample opportunities to sequence break the hell out of it. Some of the goofy ass techs you can do are outright bonkers. Take my boy Will here, who shared this over at my Discord. This is not how you get up there. The hang time in Magnolia is insane and will probably get nerfed at some point, but it's so fun. You could do this kinda in Ender Lilies, but not to this extreme. And even though it absolutely breaks the game, I am seriously not mad about it. Thanks to Lilac's gravity-defying shenanigans, the overall platforming in Magnolia is pretty entertaining. The game doesn't really tax your platforming chops, but there are some optional platforming sections that are pretty challenging, and the last biome really cranks things up for your platforming pleasure. But as long as you try defying gravity, you won't be sweating it. Much like Ender Lilies, the bulk of platforming involves positioning yourself so you don't get killed by enemies or finding switches to unlock doors and shortcuts. Biomes are pretty neat and come with some gimmicks to play around with. Some will have you swimming, some will have you climbing, and oddly enough, a couple are warp heavy. by which I mean you have to use alternate paths and literal warp portals to traverse a maze-like area. I'm not a fan of these biomes, so I was pretty upset when I saw that Magnolia added 2 of these to the game. They're not bad, I just personally hate them. That's it for this section. Ender Magnolia's abilities and platforming won't ignite your soul, but they're polished, entertaining, and offer plenty of opportunities for creative exploration. Whether you're playing by the book or breaking the game's physics in half, you're bound to have a good time traversing Lilac's world.
Progression.
When it comes to progression, Ender Magnolia does a few things differently than its predecessor. Leveling up increases defense as well as attack, though HP increases are still relegated to pickups. And Lilac has gear to equip. She gets a couple slots for bracelets, a slot for a carapace, and a slot for a totem. I mean, I would have preferred something more traditional like a chest plate, robes, and boots, but I guess carapaces and totems work too. Bracelets are pretty simple. They mainly raise defense, but they can also increase attack, HP, and healing potency, making your heals regain more HP per heal. Carapaces are odd in that they are your parry. Without one, you can't parry at all. And most carapaces also do something unique. If you have a carapace with a special attribute, if you parry just right, one can send out a shockwave, another will shoot out fireballs, and another will actually heal you. It's an unconventional way to customize your character, but I can't say I don't like it. I think it's actually pretty clever. Totems are equally as strange and do all kinds of different things, like revive you once after death or give you more healing charges. Totems are a bit more rare, and finding them while exploring almost guarantees you found something awesome. Something else familiar yet new is upgrading your homunculi. In Ender Lilies, you used Blight. In Ender Magnolia, you use parts. And there are a lot of different parts you're going to need if you want to upgrade a homunculus's abilities. All of these things I've discussed so far, gear and parts, can be found out and about or purchased at shops. That's right, Ender Magnolia has an economy with 2, technically 3, different currencies. The basic currency, called materials, you get from defeating enemies or breaking objects, and they let you buy gear and parts as well as magic vials, which is this game's chain of sorcery, or item that increases your relic equipment slots. The other currency is called scraps, and these are a little more difficult to come by. You can find caches of both materials and scraps, but your main source of scraps is going to be from hitting enemies with certain attacks. Hitting enemies with dashing attacks is your best bet at obtaining scraps, and you don't even have to kill them. Just running through an enemy is enough to get you scraps. It's a strange way of getting a specific currency, but welcomed nonetheless. I actually like when games do little odd things like this. Anyway, those scraps are used to enhance your relics. If you recall from Ender Lilies, relics are accessories that modify your character in a diverse amount of ways. Damage reduction, attack increases, XP boosts, stuff like that. Using scraps at specific shops, you can enhance relics once. And these enhancements will either increase their effects or reduce the amount of slots they take to equip. There is one other currency called fragments, but these aren't used to enhance Lilac in any way. Instead, they're used to unlock extras in the game, like the bestiary and pictures and stuff. It's cool, but not essential for the game. And that's it for progression. Ender Magnolia delivers a progression system that feels richer and more varied than its predecessor. Between the customizable gear, unique currencies, and layered upgrade mechanics, there's always something to work toward. Whether you're upgrading your homunculi, hunting for rare totems, or enhancing relics, the game ensures that every step of Lilac's journey feels rewarding and meaningful.
Exploration.
Did you see that map? Absolutely gorgeous. As you can see, Ender Magnolia's map has come a long way since the doo-doo that was Ender Lily's flowchart. Rooms match their respective shape and flow into each other naturally. The game still likes to use its lines, but in a much nicer, cleaner way. And it still retains all the excellent quality of life implements that made Ender Lily's map tolerable. Mainly how the color changes from gray to blue when you've discovered everything in an area. It's a little tougher to decipher than Ender Lily's because sometimes areas are bigger than you think. Like, there was this one spot in the Crimson Forest that looked like it would be several separate rooms. So I was looking everywhere for something in each spot. But it turned out I was only missing one thing, and getting that thing turned all these areas blue. It's not a huge deal, but it wasted my time more than once. And the map is completely dummy-proof. You have the option to mark it up, but everything is marked up for you automatically. Doors, items, shops, growth walls that need certain abilities to get past, and the game even tells you what ability will work. I never marked up the map because the game does everything for you. I'll let you decide if that's a good thing or not. I'll tell you what is a good thing: fast travel. You get it pretty early in the game, and you can use it whenever you want to instantly travel to any save point you've discovered. I know there are people out there who think early fast travel takes away from the MV experience, but I'm not one of those people. The earlier, the better, I say. And if you don't like fast travel, don't use it. But you should use it because it's awesome. Now that we have a nice map, exploration should be fun, right? You betcha! Enderlily's world is one you'll have a blast exploring. Each biome is unique, not only in easily being distinguishable between one another, but they also deviate from the typical tropes of forest biome and ice biome and fire biome. There is a forest biome, don't get me wrong, but it looks nothing like any forest biome I've seen thanks to the devs' seemingly limitless creativity. Personally, I found the game's early biomes to be the most interesting and creative. The mid to late game biomes were good, but I felt the first sections of the game were the most impactful. I digress. Overall, I liked the biomes for their world building and for the fact that they were fun to explore. There's a lot to discover during your journey. Charmed fragments that increase your HP, relics, totems, bracelets, material and scrap caches, etc. And, of course, lore items like notes and diaries that expound upon the world and plot. Searching every nook and cranny of the Land of Fumes will reward you with something cool. Even a couple of optional bosses. And Levy for some reason. It's a silly running gag, but I thought it was funny at least. I guess that brings me to side quests. Finding Levy rewards you with a quest item. And this quest item, you'll have no idea what to do with it. Eventually, you'll discover all you have to do is walk up to a random NPC and see if an event triggers. Yeah, there's no rhyme or reason to these side quests. And every side quest is essentially half of a fetch quest, by which I mean you just skip the part where the NPC asks you to get an item and instead just bring the item to them. You'd think this would save time, but it actually doesn't because I don't know who to take this perfume to. It's an odd setup for side quests, but it's fine despite being a little clunky. It really only works because fast travel is so good and the rewards are actually pretty sweet. The last thing to really discuss about exploration is its linearity. The game is split into 3 sections, the lower, central, and upper stratums. And while progressing between stratums is linear, your progression inside each stratum is fairly open with some occasional utility gating. It's a nice structure for a couple of reasons. One, it gives players enough openness to explore at their own pace without overwhelming them. And 2, it's a great way to pace the game's plot. That's it for exploration. The improved map, rewarding discoveries, and thoughtfully designed biomes make every moment spent wandering through the Land of Fumes feel meaningful. Whether you're hunting for lore, gearing up for the next boss, or just enjoying the game's stunning visuals, exploring Ender Magnolia is a satisfying and engaging experience.
Atmosphere, narrative.
It won't come as a surprise to hear Ender Magnolia has an amazing atmosphere. As an Ender game, it comes with everything you'd expect. Beautiful hand-drawn visuals, an incredibly creative setting, and music that just hits, man. The Japanese indie band Millie has returned, and with that return, they brought the heat. Because every single track they drop in this game is fire. Their haunting pianos and dreamy vocals encapsulate the melancholic beauty of finding hope in a sea of despair. It's the same tone that made Enderlily so endearing. And there were moments when the vocals kicked in that made me think I was playing Nier Automata. And quite honestly, I can't think of higher praise. As far as the narrative goes, it's not perfect, but it's still good stuff. Superficially, Magnolia does keep things a bit too similar to the first game, but it also does a lot differently than Lily's, so the experiences feel different enough, and of course, this is a good thing. Magnolia introduces the Land of Fumes, a world teeming with life compared to the desolation of Land's End. And unlike Lily, Lilac talks, and so do her homunculi. This is a welcomed shift and something I always wanted in the first game, to just chill and speak with my spirit homies. Magnolia leans heavily into character interactions and relationships, allowing you to speak with homunculi at respites and NPCs throughout the world. This attempted fleshing out of a cast adds richness, but it also creates a minor issue. The sheer size of the ensemble leaves characters, including Lilac herself, feeling slightly underdeveloped. And there are some characters that just get dropped. For instance, whatever happened to the spider hookshot homunculus? That was a fairly interesting thread to follow, but it just ends with no resolution. Some finality to the storyline would have been nice. The overarching story, unfortunately, struggles to stand on its own. Though I do like the story, it feels like it lives entirely in the shadow of its predecessor, afraid to fully commit to its own ideas. It's got a sweet setting, a world of homunculi, unethical experimentations, toxic fumes, and ancient magic. This world is incredible and brimming with potential. Early on, Magnolia balances its unique identity with subtle nods to Ender Lilies, teasing connections in all the right ways. But as the game progresses, the narrative becomes increasingly muddled. Magnolia's central conflict and stakes are introduced or revealed far too late. And even then, they're left frustratingly vague. The villains, while varied in concept, are kind of flat, failing to match the thread of Ender Lily's faceless blight. Worse still, the story's greatest sin is its unoriginal hook and setup. Lilac's motivation, a search for a mysterious white-haired maternal figure while combating a spreading corruption, mirrors Lily's journey almost to a fault. The game could have leaned into this parallel, perhaps crafting a tragic cycle to give the repetition deeper meaning. I mean, anything would have helped to make this aspect of the game not feel copy-paste. All in all, there are a lot of similarities between the two games' narratives when it comes to theming, but Magnolia is a much bigger and ambitious tale that leans more into its mysteries than it does its atmosphere. And while Magnolia has a bit of archaeological storytelling like its predecessor, Magnolia is more interested in telling a tale in the present through multiple characters and relationships within a traditional 3-act structure. It's got a completely different feel from Ender Lilies, and I appreciate that. Magnolia has a couple of endings, and its true ending is an improvement over Ender Lilies, avoiding the fetch quest nature of its predecessor. Magnolia requires exploration into secret biomes and adds some optional bosses to take down while offering more lore. And you know I love that. My only issue with it is that a crucial connection to Ender Lilies is teased, but ultimately goes nowhere and isn't even committed to. Instead, the devs opted to keep this character's identity ambiguous, leaving more questions than answers and failing to capitalize on the legacy of the first game. That's it for this section. While Magnolia's narrative themes, class disparity, resilience, and the cost of sacrifice, offer intriguing layers, the execution falters under the weight of its ambitions. It tries to be a bigger and more complex story, and succeeds in many ways. But its lack of originality by repeating its predecessor's setup, and the fact that it left its cast underdeveloped, mainly Lily, prevent it from achieving the narrative heights of Ender Lilies. I guess this kind of proves that sometimes less is more. Which is ironic because Magnolia followed this advice to a T when it came to decreasing the amount of homunculi Lilac could have compared to Lily's spirits. Anyway, complaining about a narrative that's actually pretty decent feels silly, especially because Magnolia didn't do anything wrong. It just didn't do anything exceptional in the realm of its narrative. Despite this, I liked it and it kept me hooked while exploring. Moreover, Magnolia's atmosphere, character interactions, and world building were more than enough to make it a story worth experiencing.
Final thoughts and score.
Ender Magnolia takes the solid foundation of its predecessor and elevates it with meaningful improvements, ambitious storytelling, and an engaging world. Combat is rhythmic and satisfying, with thoughtful tweaks like unlimited attack use and status effects adding variety. The platforming and exploration feel more dynamic thanks to creative biomes and a much improved map system. While the new progression mechanics, including more robust gear customization and unique currencies for different shops, keep the journey rewarding. Atmospherically, the game is breathtaking, with Millie's wistful soundtrack and the beautifully hand-drawn world capturing the melancholic yet hopeful tone the series is known for. The narrative, while less isolated and meditative than Ender Lilies, is rich with character interactions, world building, and a more traditional 3-act structure. This shift makes Magnolia feel like a natural evolution of the series, with more life, more stakes, and more to uncover. While some nitpicks remain, like the absurd fluctuations and difficulty as the game progresses, the game's narrative, though ambitious, not being as impactful as it potentially could have been, or the odd way side quests are handled, Ender Magnolia is a triumphant sequel. It expands on everything fans loved about Ender Lilies while carving out its own identity. Whether you're a fan of the original or a newcomer to the series, Ender Magnolia is a must-play. I award Ender Magnolia a 9.5 out of 10. Ender Magnolia is currently out on PC, Nintendo Switch, PlayStation 4 and 5, and Xbox Series X and S. I play the game exclusively on the Steam Deck with 0 issues, and thus award Ender Magnolia a Steam Deck rating of verified.
Pair placement.
Ender Magnolia takes everything Ender Lilies did right and polishes it to near perfection. The combat is smoother, the progression is more rewarding, and the narrative is more ambitious, though it does stumble a little. But it does fix the infamous map issues from Ender Lilies, giving us something that's not only functional, but also a little easier on the eyes. And let's not forget, Millie once again delivers a soundtrack that's nothing short of mesmerizing. That said, Ender Magnolia isn't without its flaws. The lack of dual loadouts feels like a step back from its predecessor, and while the world building and exploration are excellent, some biomes, especially in the mid to late game, don't quite match the creativity of the earlier sections. The side quests are also a little clunky, but at least they're rewarding enough to justify the effort. Even with these minor issues, Ender Magnolia delivers a highly polished and memorable Metroidvania experience. It's a worthy sequel that not only builds on the foundation of Ender Lilies, but also carves out its own identity with bold new ideas and refinements. Ender Magnolia, Bloom in the Mist, tunes itself in the S tier. Ender Magnolia isn't just a sequel done right. It's a masterclass in evolving a franchise while honoring what made it great to begin with. And while I personally prefer the tone, atmosphere, and story of the first game, there's no doubt that this entry has helped the series blossom to new heights.